I messed up. I should have never, ever tried to take the valve covers off this thing. Let me tell you where I'm at. So, I started to do the ignition upgrades, which included the spark plugs. I got the spark plugs pulled out. The passenger side looked good. Started pulling them out on the driver's side, and at least 2, maybe 3 of the holes had a ton of oil in them, which, you know, coming from an LS/Chevy background really freaked me out. Then I started to understand how the design of these mod motors is, and that there's a thing called spark plug seals, which are located under the valve covers. I figured, hey, no big deal. How hard is it to remove a valve cover? I was wrong. You do not want to try to remove valve covers in a mod motor. Unfortunately, I got them partway removed, pretty much destroyed the gaskets, valve cover gaskets in the process, and now I'm stuck. So this video is going to turn into a little bit of a how-to on how to replace valve cover gaskets and seals in a mod motor, which, from what I've learned, can take up to dropping the motor, but at a minimum, at least on the driver's side, removing the clutch cable, removing the brake booster, removing the master cylinder, removing part of the intake. I mean, there's so many things you have to do just to get these stupid valve covers off. So I screwed up. Maybe this was something that could have waited till later, but nonetheless, we're doing them now. Let's get started. Last time, if you didn't watch, basically we tackled a few items on this list here, which I'll get to in a second. Today we are going to look at some ignition upgrades. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the Ford Racing wires yet, but I will go through plugs, coils, some other things to look at. I'll also talk about a couple other issues we're working on with the car. But let's get started by checking off on the list what we completed last time and see what we have left. Okay, so in the last video, we were able to completely remove the old nitrous system. That's off the list. We got the over axle pipes installed, so that's done. So I've got, all that's left here is to install a catted mid pipe. We tried to get this through inspection with the previous owner's off-road X pipe. Unfortunately, that did not work, so I have one ordered from American Muscle. That should be coming in, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, this thing will pass emissions. We can cross this off and go straight to the next phase here. And actually, we've already got this started a little bit. The overheating problem is all but solved, so we are good there. That is done. We still have some other issues. So today we are going to look at the plugs, coils, and wires, and hopefully we can fix the ticking noise by also tightening the manifolds. But that may have to wait because getting access to all of those bolts is pretty tricky. So I might wait until I pull the filter, and the oil filter might give me a little bit more space. Let's see, what do we got over here that we already knocked off the list? We don't have anything to knock off the list. Okay, nope, I lied, tires. We got tires. Okay, this is what's left. So, we're getting there. We're not complete just yet, but let me show you the cool parts that I got in from Summer Racing. All right, guys, let's do a little bit of an unboxing here with what we got for the Cobra. So, we have 2 MSD coil packs to replace the existing coils. We've also got a set of NGK, let's try that, some NGK spark plugs, stock heat range, and we're gonna throw these. Let's take a look at what these fancy coils look like from MSD. This is part number 8241, and they come with hardware and instructions. And if I don't say so myself, they are a pretty cool piece. You know how MSD is, you gotta get red. So here are the coil packs, which will replace the existing, and I'll show you those in a second. They look pretty tired and worn out to me. I think from the best that I can tell, you're supposed to replace those somewhere on the 60,000 mile mark. This car has 66,023 years of use. So I think it's safe to say that these stock coil packs could stand to be replaced. I've also heard over here that you can replace this piece or actually delete it altogether, as it can cause some issues. We're not going to do that. We're just going to leave it. I will have to remove, at a minimum, I'm thinking, the cold air intake on this side, but maybe the strut tower brace, hopefully not. On this side, I think I will have enough access to get to the spark plugs. with this on here, but we shall see. That might have to come off. Time will tell. So let's dive into the instructions. When you get these, they're going to come with instructions. They're going to come with new hardware, including spacers. It looks like the spacers go beneath the coils. I don't know if that's because these are a little bit taller. We'll just have to see. They might be. When I get one of them off, I will check that for you to see. They also come with additional instructions if you were going to hook it up to an ignition box like this one right here. I won't be doing that, so it'll be pretty straightforward. Now again, I don't have the wires, which is kind of a pain in the ass. I like to do this all at once, so I'm going to be hooking the old wires back up and then probably start it just to make sure that it all fires up. I will be gapping these plugs, so I have to look up the specs. I think it's somewhere in the 50 to 60 thousandths range, but I'm going to look up those specs on those plugs. I'll put a little bit of anti-seize on them before I install them and some dielectric grease on the top, just so that we have a good connection. But we'll get to that in a second. So let's first deal with these coils. So the spark plug wires are nice. They're numbered. You do obviously want to make sure that they go back in the same orientation. So I think what I'm going to do is just mark these old ones here. Obviously you got to denote which one is the factory and which one's the driver, which one's the passenger, just so you don't get them mixed up. If you were to totally screw this up, I'm sure you can go online and see the firing order, but this I think will make it a lot easier. Man, these wires are old. Nothing too difficult with the removal here. You just need basic hand tools. I would recommend on this, since all the fasteners are so small, you probably want to go ahead and do it by hand. I would worry that if you use something like an impact, you might hit it too hard and potentially break one of them. Probably not, but just to be careful. I also used to like to use 1/4-inch drive stuff for the small things, but it's straightforward. Everything comes off, and then you'll see me just kind of clean the surfaces before I put the new coils back in. Just a quick edit here. These spacers actually are only required for the Ford Focus models, so you don't actually need these. They do give you longer hardware, which I used. They will work without the spacers. The threads are long enough, but the threads will stick down. So it's up to you whether or not you want to use new hardware or the old. This is Allen, the other stuff is One other thing I noticed, the old Motorcraft ones are actually labeled. I know it's hard to see, but they actually tell you what the firing order is on the coil. The new ones don't, so I kind of wish they would have done that. That would have been nice. And otherwise, they drop right in real easy, as you saw. There's like a little gasket right here, and the old one had it too. You just got to make sure that this doesn't get pushed up, so when you slide that connector in, it makes a good seal. So I think what I'm going to do is start this thing up just for a second after I get the new ones in, just to make sure that I didn't mess that up before I go and do the wires and the plugs, because it's always good just to make sure there's no problems before you move forward. Okay, got the new coils on. Again, these are old wires. Just doing this temporarily. I'm going to start it up real quick, just make sure it idles and everything's good. It runs. It's not running on a couple cylinders, just to make sure the coils are good. I did check the resistance in the plug between the 3 different posts, and I tested one of these versus one of the old ones, and I got the same value. So the old coils weren't bad, which we knew, but this is just kind of a preventative maintenance type thing. So let me start it up. Sounds good to me, no backfires or anything. Next step, I'm gonna try and do this without removing the strut tower brace, just because it's like 38 bolts, but if I have to, I will. And I'm gonna pull this cover off. I don't know how well you guys can see, but these are the boots for the spark plug wires, and they're supposed to fit underneath here, which they aren't, which just tells me that someone has gone in here at some point and either taken this off to replace the spark plugs, which I would hope. Hopefully it wasn't part of some more major engine issue, but it does look like they have been touched at some point. Again, this is pretty easy. You just need basic hand tools to remove the 4 nuts that hold the cover over top of the spark plugs and the boots. This is definitely the easier side, as nothing else needs to come off to access the spark plugs. So if you're used to messing with LS stuff like I am, this is super weird. The spark plugs go way down in. You can barely see them into each of the heads. You got these long boots. Looks like they use some sort of oil on them, so I don't know. So far I haven't seen anything that looks ridiculous. It's a little bit grimy in here, but other than that, it seems okay. So I'll get my long reach extension and see if I can't pull the spark plugs out. You will need a long reach extension. 3/8 drive works great. The spark plugs are a 5/8 inch, and you do want to use a spark plug socket to ensure that you don't drop the spark plug after you unthread it from the holes. Well, that never happens. The spark plugs that I bought were worse than the spark plugs that I took out. Let me show you what these are and why I think these are actually a better choice and I may reuse them. So I opted for kind of the middle of the road platinum spark plugs by NGK in the stock heat range. To my surprise, what I pulled out were a set of the same heat range, but iridium plugs by NGK. So good stuff. And when I look at the plugs, I was looking for something wrong. I mean, they look brand new. There's not even any discoloration on them. It's like they weren't even running. So these might actually go back in the car if the other ones come out the same. I did notice there was some oil on a few of them, and I'm wondering if that is from the dips. I'm not sure, because one of the things it could be is when they filled it with oil, it spilled over. This piece right here wasn't fitting in there correctly, so it could have let some oil go in. It could be a leaking valve cover seal. I'm not really sure, but I'm tempted to reuse these plugs and dry them off and seal it up good and see if they leak. And if they do, I'll pull them out. I've got a backup set of plugs. So I'm gonna pull the other side, but if they look good, then we're just gonna stick with the iridium and take the other ones back. So that's awesome. I'm assuming that someone has probably done this without removing the strut tower brace, but I think it's going to be easiest to take all that stuff out of the way. Obviously, you are going to have to remove the intake because it's directly on top of the access plate for the spark plugs. Whenever I do that, I like to cover up the throttle body just to ensure nothing gets in there. This probably isn't necessary, and as you'll see later in the video, I have to take a lot more off to continue this process. But nonetheless, I think it's always a good thing to do. Just take your time here, careful with the bolts, and don't break any of the boots as you pop them off. All right, so I got good news and I got bad news. First, the good news. The plugs that I pulled out of it, as you saw, were better than what I was going to put in it. So I reused those plugs. I checked the gap, I cleaned them off, and they worked. I think they're going to work fine. Here's the problem, though. On the driver's side, I found a lot of oil down in these holes. Now, I've got a couple theories. So the first theory is somebody was filling the engine and they overfilled it, or they dropped some oil and it spilled and went down in here. That's one theory. And it is kind of cruddy down in here, and that's a possibility, right? But when I look down in here and I look at their seals, can you see those? So that seal right there doesn't look too bad. That one where I saw a ton of oil and you can still see oil down in there. Geez, I'm making it hard to see. See how it's like kind of cracked? So that sucks. So that's no bueno. That one's kind of similar. That one's got a crack in it as well. So anyways, I'm trying to make it easier for you guys to see here. Right around 5 o'clock, there's a crack on that one. So I ordered a set of valve cover gaskets, and also which come with the spark plug seals. They come with these little duders too that go in there. So those are all coming, should be here tomorrow. I had to take off the strut tower brace in order to access that. Obviously you got to remove the cold air intake to get to this side anyway. It's just one more thing that I didn't feel like doing. But you find stuff like that and you got to address it, so here we are. So this is just me showing you kind of my thought process as I was doing this. Once I noticed that issue, I decided, okay, I'll go ahead and I will remove the passenger side valve cover. Now, I did no background research into what was required in order to do that. It just looked like it could come off, and I'd worked on other cars where it was easy. So I started removing bolts, and I figured that I could pop it off. But as you'll see here, I get all the bolts loose, I start wiggling, and I realize not only is it RTV down in the front, but also this thing is not coming out easily, and certainly not with the throttle body in the way. So stay tuned as you see what happens next. All right, guys, so this is what you get when you order valve cover gaskets from Felpro, you get these little duders right here, which are, I'll call them grommets, but this is what your bolts go into that hold your valve cover to your head. These are the spark plug seals that keep oil from the valve train out of the spark plug holes. And obviously these are the gaskets. Now you can see here, I've got big hands. These are so much bigger than any kind of small block or big block head for that matter. So you can see what I'm up against. This motor's really shoehorned in there. So these are gonna go in. And then also I finally got my 9mm wires. It was delayed for a while, but I got those, some Ford Racing ones. So those will go in along with the new spark plugs and coils. At this point, I was fully committed, so I decided if I'm going to remove the intake and all the associated components, I might as well do a very good job of labeling everything. So I'm taking a Sharpie here, I'm making marks next to all the electrical connectors to ensure that they go back in the correct place. Additionally, I set up a separate table in my garage so I could set all the parts as they come off, and I got baggies that I labeled so that each nut and bolt had its own place so it wouldn't be missed when it went back. One added step that I would recommend if you're going to do this, and I would have done previously, is to go ahead and vacuum everything before you start removing all the parts. Well, I turned the time lapse off because I was inside the car, and then I got up here and I tried to wiggle it, and I actually got it to come free without even touching the Hydro Boost. So we'll see. I may have to loosen that to get it back on, but I did get it off. Here's what you're looking at. Here are those spark plug seals I was talking about. So, you know, that one's not too bad, but some of them are in pretty bad shape. Like, there's your leak right there. There's another one of your leakers right there. You know? That one's probably okay. So, there is the valve cover. It's off. Man, that's a pain in the butt, jeez. Okay, so once you get the valve cover off, your gasket replacement kit is gonna come with a couple different parts. It's gonna come with the seal that goes around the valve cover itself, which you slide in the groove, that goes in dry. It's gonna come with 4 seals for the spark plugs. They just get kind of hammered on. And then you got these little guys right here. This is the old one. So basically this metal piece slides down in and you put your bolt in, and this keeps it from you tightening the valve cover too much. But this rubber part gets replaced, but you need to reuse this other piece. So you pry this off, put a new one on, pop it back in, and you're done. Okay, so let's see if we can get lucky. Fingers crossed. Okay, so you got to apply some RTV to where the timing cover meets the cylinder head. I'm doing that right now. I've got stuff zip tied out of the way. This part's scary. So the trick that I think I saw before when I tried it was to go in the front first and get it way down past that front timing gear. I'm gonna pause for a second and make sure I haven't lost that gasket. If I do, it's all for nothing. And man, is it not easy to see. That's it. Start throwing some screws in here. Okay, I would recommend that you put everything back together slowly and in a torque sequence, starting from the inside, working out in stages. Final torque spec that I use personally, 89 inch-pounds. Okay, that's just gonna about wrap up this part of the video. I'm gonna split the second half into another video. I'm gonna try and keep my videos a little bit shorter. Sometimes I think it can be a bit daunting to watch a 30-minute video on how to repair a 97 Cobra. So I'm gonna make an effort to try and just constrict my videos a little bit and bring out more. That way you guys will see more content more readily, and also you won't have to scroll through as long if you're looking for some specific info. So before I wrap it up, I do want to show you a couple quick things things. Just basically some tips if you're doing this. I know scouring the forums, there are a ton of people who say, hey, I've got a 96 or 98 Cobra, or I've got a Mach 1 and I've got to replace the valve covers, or I got to paint them or whatever. And they tell you that you have to remove the booster, and that's actually not the case. So I want to show you a real quick tip on what you can do to keep the booster in the car. So just so we're being clear here, this is the brake booster, this is the master cylinder. Now, if you look at the lines coming off the master cylinder, there are some hard lines that go down to a valve right there. Now, actually, there's a stud that goes through, and if you look down in here, let's see if I can zoom in and get to it. It's hard to see. See that nut right there? If you remove that, you can actually get this much further out of the way, because otherwise you undo it from the booster, the master cylinder, but you can't wiggle it that far because it's still constricted. But when you remove that, you can peel this out of the way, leave this in place, which really minimizes working on your back in there, and you're able to scoop this out. So that is my little tip for you guys. Okay guys, that's about it for this video. If you like the content, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, ask me questions if you have them. I'm happy to answer them. In the next video, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get the wires back on. I got the Ford Racing wires. We're gonna tackle this other side. I've been kind of delaying that, / went on vacation to Yellowstone this weekend, so that got put on hold, but we're gonna tackle the other side. Basically, my hard deadline is I should be getting the catted mid-pipe this Friday, so I want to try and get everything kind of put back together before Friday so I can fire it up. Because again, the big goal right now is that first item on the list that I showed you earlier. I want to get this thing through emissions, tagged, legal, so I can drive it, because it's very hard to troubleshoot things when you can't legally take your car on the road. You're constricted to the neighborhoods, and even then, if you get pulled over, it's a problem. So that is my big goal. I did get my gauges in, so I've got gauges in from Pro Sport that will be going in, very cool. I ordered a radio, since the gauges will take place, the CD changer, and the old radio was missing a head unit, so that'll come out. I also got, and I will talk about this more in the next video, I did find a location to get the correct alternator pulley, so hopefully that will fix my charging issues. And lastly, when I had all this stuff apart, especially the mid-pipe off the car, I was able to try and tighten the exhaust manifold bolt. So with any luck, despite some of these setbacks with all this extra work I did, I will actually have checked off a lot of stuff from my list. So again, that should wrap it up for now. I really appreciate you guys watching. All of the kind comments you put about, getting more content on these era Mustangs on YouTube. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned, guys, for more. Check me out, Instagram, Truck and Roll 989. Have a good day.